Imagine being one of the strongest hunters in your country and then realizing that you're completely irrelevant. Well, that's what happened to most S-rank hunters when Sung Jinwoo, a player once laughed at as the weakest hunter alive, shattered the machine that was built to measure power itself. Not just breaking it, obliterating it. And the real terror for S-rank hunters? That it was just the beginning. Imagine you're one of the strongest hunters in the country and you know your place. Then all of a sudden this guy, who everyone knows as the weakest hunter alive, walks in for a reevaluation. He puts his hands on the mana machine and it doesn't just give a high reading, it shatters the machine, just blows it to pieces. The room goes dead silent. In that moment, every S-rank watching realized that their rulebook, the very system that they used to measure power, was now officially useless. Jinwoo wasn't just some new S-rank. This was someone who broke the whole scale itself. But being an S-rank on paper isn't enough. The real power players like Chairman Go Gunhee, Choi Jong-in, and Baek Yoonho all gather to see what this new hunter can actually do. They ask him for a demonstration. Instead of showing off a powerful punch or a fancy spell of some sort, Jinwoo just summons part of his shadow army. The room then drops a few more degrees. These top-tier hunters are left visibly shocked and speechless, staring at Jinwoo's army that shouldn't even exist. Baek Yoonho, a man that is normally overflowing with pride, has this instant and horrifying realization that he isn't the main character in this story. Not even close. That theory didn't stay a theory for very long. Soon after, an A-rank raid goes wrong, and an S-rank hunter named Chae Hae-in and the chief inspector Woo Jin-chul both rush in, expecting to be the heroes to save the day. However, when they arrive, the fight's already over. Jinwoo is just standing there, effortlessly dominating the high orc shaman Kargalin, not even breaking a sweat while his shadow soldiers are busy cleaning everything up. And then came the truly terrifying part. The shaman rose as a new shadow soldier, Tusk, and that's the moment that everyone realized that Jinwoo didn't just defeat his enemies. He collected them as his trophies as well. Word of this obviously gets around pretty quick. Pretty soon, he's at an international conference, and Japan's strongest hunter, Goto Ryuji, wants to test him. They have this really intense duel, and to everyone watching, it looks like a serious, full-power fight between two titans. Goto manages to keep his composure, but after it's broken up, while Goto's catching his breath, Jinwoo just casually admits that he was holding back the whole time. He said he was just testing them. The mood in that entire room went cold. Chae Hae-in, watching it all, was completely stunned. She realized that he was still hiding an immense amount of power. This wasn't really a duel, it was kind of more like a pop quiz, and they were the ones being graded. But all of that was just a warm-up for Jeju Island. The raid on Jeju Island was a complete and total disaster. The best hunters from Korea and Japan were getting wiped out by the Ant King, Beru, and his swarm. And then Jinwoo just shows up. He steps into the middle of this losing battle with a weird sense of calm and just starts handing out these priceless healing potions like they're bottles of water. He single-handedly saves everyone's life, and then he starts giving orders. And the crazy part is, all these S-rank hunters listened. The top S-ranks in their country, legends in their own right, were now just following Jinwoo's lead. As their new commander, the first thing Jinwoo did was to take on the Ant King by himself. And at first, the Ant King probably thought it was some sort of cruel joke. After all, this was the monster that had just dismantled an entire army of S-ranks, a creature so fast that the hunters could barely see it move. Well, Jinwoo fought the Ant King alone and handled him with relative ease. As they watched him fight, the other S-ranks had a collective and terrifying realization. The space between their abilities and Jinwoo's abilities wasn't just a gap, it was a lot more like a bottomless canyon. The Ant King, this unbeatable force of nature, went from arrogant to confused and then actually got scared. The Ant King felt true fear for the first time ever in its life and tried to run away because of this. Jinwoo just hunted it down with relative ease and calmness, tearing the Ant King apart with savage and brutal blows that left no doubt about who was the real predator on Jeju Island. In the midst of all this chaos, they realized that Chae Haein was about to die from an earlier wound. For a moment, everyone just stood there, helpless. The best of the best were reduced to watching a comrade fade away before their own eyes. What Jinwoo did next is what truly terrified everyone. He walked over to the body of their fallen friend, the S-rank healer Min Byung-gu, and without asking permission, he pulled out his soul. Baek Yoonho, who had been close friends with the healer, looked like he wanted to scream, but what could he possibly do at that point? The other hunters could only watch in absolute horror as the shadow of their friend rose up and performed one last miraculous heal, sewing back together the fatal wound on Chae Haein's body. It was a rather grotesque miracle, but a miracle nonetheless. A dark and forbidden power had just been used to bring back the light of life itself. And that kind of contradiction was relatively horrifying to these hunters. It was a line that no one else would have even thought to cross. And Jinwoo wasn't done there. After using one dead body to save a life, he then turned to the Ant King's corpse to claim his prize. Think about the sheer audacity of all of this happening. Jinwoo didn't just kill the monster that beat an army of hunters. He decided to make it his own pet. All he had to do was say the word, "Arise," and the air itself seemed to vibrate with his command. The monster that had almost killed a bunch of S-rank hunters got back up, but this time it was no longer the Ant King. This monster knelt before Jinwoo. The other hunters instinctively took a step back, a physical reaction to seeing the natural order of things so completely broken and mixed up. Jinwoo had just now turned the source of all these hunters' terror into his own most powerful puppet, and he even gave it a name: Beru. It was like Jinwoo was putting a leash on a hurricane, a final statement that even the world's greatest calamities now belonged to Sung Jinwoo. After seeing all of this unfold, there was nothing left to argue about. The final admission would come later in a quiet tent that the battle was finally over. It was Choi Jong-in, the hunter who everybody called the ultimate soldier, who finally said what everyone was thinking. He just looked at the other guildmasters and said, "He's far stronger than I am." Coming from a man with his pride, that kind of quiet confession was more earth-shattering than any explosion. That was the moment that everyone knew the old world order was officially over. It was proof that everyone from the top to the bottom now had to reckon with the horrifying power of the Shadow Monarch that Jinwoo had now become.